Hi everyone, it's Lindsay and I'm back today with a tutorial on coloring with bleach and perfect pearls. Now I'm starting out with the piece of 3 3/4 inch by 5.5 inch black cardstock, and I'm using the Fresh Bouquet stamp set from Inspired by Stamping. And all I'm going to do is place this in the top center of that card panel and just stamp it down with some Versamark ink. I want to get it placed just right, and this is a rather large stamp, so I'm using my Misty for all my stamping today. And I'm also going to be using the Thinking of You sentiment from the stamp set, and I'll place that right below the bouquet of flowers and just try to center that up as best I can. Now whenever I close my lid to my Misty, I'm really going to be able to look through that lid and make sure that the sentiment as well as that flower stamp on the top is straight and it's centered on the cardstock. And I do that by using the grid on the top and counting squares. So on the left hand side of my sentiment I have 2 squares, and on the right hand side I have 2 squares. I can also use the lines to make sure that that is nice and straight. So now that I know that everything's centered, I'm going to open back up my little lid there and use my Versamark ink pad to ink this up and stamp it down. I'm also going to prep this cardstock with my embossing bag just because I don't want any little stray embossing powders if I can help it. Now this technique was highly inspired by watching one of Terry Burson's videos. She is on a design team with me, and I happened to see her bleaching with glitter video. I'll link it below in the description box. But I've wanted to try coloring with bleach for a while now, and after watching her video I was like, alright, I need to sit down and actually do it. I was scared to do it. So she gave me the confidence to just go for it. So I'm inking up this stamp, and I'm just going to flip that lid right back over and stamp it down onto that black panel. Now my magnet did get in the way a little bit in my sentiment, so all I have to do is pop back open the lid, move that out of the way, and when I close that I know my stamp will be in the exact same position. So I decided to go ahead and heat emboss my image, and I am using Princess Gold from Ranger embossing powder, and this is just a really pretty sparkly gold, very true gold embossing powder. Now you don't have to heat emboss, however I would highly recommend it. It gives a little bit of a well, so it controls your bleaching a little bit better. Now I found that whenever I brought my heat gun to the paper, it wasn't heating up as fast as I wanted it to. It wasn't melting down. So a little trick is, if it's not melting as fast as you want, and to control the warping, hit it from the back for a few seconds like I'm doing here, and then when you bring it to the front it will melt that much faster, and it really cuts down on the warping. And letting your heat gun heat up too will also cut down on the warping. Because I'm going to be adding so much moisture with the bleach, and this is regular cardstock, I really want to keep my warping to a minimum at this point because it will warp a little bit later on with all that liquid. Now I'm just going to go ahead and heat set this sentiment down at the bottom, and then once I'm happy that all the powder is melted on there, I'm going to go ahead and start the bleaching process. Now you can put your bleach in a water brush pen that you don't use anymore, and that will work just fine. Or you can use an old paintbrush like I'm using here. I don't care if this paintbrush gets ruined, so I'm just using it first to take a few scoops of Gold Perfect Pearls out of the canister, and I am putting it in this little glass. It's from my cosmetology days. It's to hold your liquid when you do acrylics on nails. So it won't break down with all that bleach in there. So I'm using this little glass container and just an old paintbrush, and then I've squeezed some bleach from my water brush pen right into that container. Now I gave it a quick stir, but every time I go and put this on the paper and let that settle, the Perfect Pearls will settle in the bottom. So whenever I dip my brush in, you'll see I'm giving it a quick stir, and then I'll pick up the color and bring it back over to the paper. Now you don't have to do that, but if you don't, you're not going to get the shine like I'm getting here. So I'm just bringing this over and painting this on. It does not take long to do this, and I'm just putting down the color. I'm not being very careful. You don't need to be very careful inside the image with the embossing lines. It's not going to hurt your embossing at all, but you don't want to go outside the lines, because any piece of cardstock that this touches outside, it's going to bleach that cardstock as well. So just try and keep it inside your embossed lines. I'm also putting a pretty generous layer of this down. I mean, I'm getting this cardstock pretty wet. Now, I'm not doing a whole lot of rubbing because I don't want the cardstock to pill at all. I'm just putting this color down. Once I have this little flower colored in though, I'm going to go ahead and show you that I will bring over my heat tool. And you can see right now that this isn't very intense. However, whenever I heat this with my heat tool, it's going to really intensify that bleaching effect. You can see it on the back there, how it bleeds through the back as well. And you can hit it from the back too, and that will intensify the color too. So I will just give this a nice little blast with my heat tool and really speed up that process and really intensify it. And it also intensifies the shine. So there I've got this nice shiny gold flower that is also heat embossed with gold. Now it is 2 different colors of gold, so I'm getting a little bit of definition from the leaves and things like that. So I'm not losing any of that with this technique. So you might just want to keep that in mind if you do a gold perfect pearl and a gold emboss or a gold heat embossing powder. You just want to make sure they're a little bit 2 different tones so you're not losing all that definition. I'm going to speed up the video a little bit and just continue to put this down. And now that I have that one flower done and I've shown you the process, I'm going to color in about half of this, and then I'll go ahead and heat set again, and then I'll finish the other half and heat set one more time. So I could go on and I could fill this entire thing with that bleach solution and then hit it with the heat tool, but the longer your bleach stays exposed to air, it's going to lose some of that reaction that it gets. So you want to make sure that it's fresh out of the bottle, make sure that it hasn't been sitting out in the air for a long time. And just while it's still wet and fresh on your paper, hit it with your heat tool. So I'm going to fill in half of this, and then I'll hit it with that heat tool, and then go back and fill the other half in, just so it doesn't lose so much of that reaction. Now you will notice on pieces of this, some of it turns a little bit more gold, some of it stays a little bit less, and it has a little bit less shimmer. And there is some variation in the way this turns out, but that's okay. That's the way I actually like it. It gives it a little bit more interest instead of it all being one shade of that shimmer gold. And you'll see it especially right here in this hydrangea. And you can see a little bit of that warping going on now. And I will show you how you can fix that. And it's very easy. You just need to use a lot of adhesive. And that's what I did to kind of fix that. You could also, if you wanted to, place this under a few books overnight, and that could flatten it out. But it's really up to you how you want to fix that. Now, also, I will say that this does smell a little bit, this technique. Bleach smells. I don't mind the smell of it. I clean with bleach a lot. I know that's probably horrible, but I like things to be really clean, so I use bleach. So it doesn't bother me so much. Now, I wouldn't recommend using this in a tiny enclosed space. Make sure that you're in a well-ventilated area when you use this, especially when you hit it with that heat, because that's when it really smells. Now, I did let this dry and let it sit for a little bit, and then I came back and finished this the next day. Now, I didn't smell any bleach left over on it. It must have all evaporated overnight. If you do smell any of that bleach, you could always hit it, with a dryer sheet. Just run your dryer sheet over it or something, and that could take care of the smell as well. But I didn't have any problems with it leaving a smell behind. Now I'm just going to finish up this one last flower and leaf, but I do want to say that this was a very quick technique to do. Now, aside from letting this dry overnight and getting rid of that smell and letting all the bleach evaporate, altogether without the dry time and letting it sit out, it only took about 25 minutes from start to finish for this card. So it could definitely be something that you do in bulk. Now you can see I've got a little bit of bleach left over, and that's not going to be any good unless I use it right now. So I will just toss that out and wash it down my sink later on. It's not going to be any good once you let it sit out. It will lose that reactive property. So to put this card together, I've got 2 gold glitter cardstock pieces that are about a 1/2 inch wide here that I've cut, and I've got double-sided adhesive on the back of them, and I'm just putting them on both the left and the right side of an A2 top folding card base. I will use my long blade scissors just to make sure that those are nice and even with the card base. However, I didn't want to cut them beforehand just because I find that it's much more efficient just to do it while it's on the card base. Now I went ahead and put some fun foam on the back of this panel that I had done with the bleach solution, and I used a ton of adhesive on the back of this just to cut down on that warping. Now I will just line this up with the card base and put that down. Now you will see a little bit of white peeking out right at the bottom there. I'll just use my scissors to trim that all off. Now I'm using my Quick Sticks tool and glossy accents to put down some sequins onto this card base. Now with the Quick Sticks tool, if you ever find that it loses its stick, all you need to do is pull part of that gummy piece off and twist the top of that, and fresh gum will come out of the bottom of that, and then it should stick nice again and pick up your sequins just like it's brand new. So I'm just using that along with the little piece that comes out of the bottom to put down my sequins, and I am using glossy accents to hold them in place. And that finished the card off. It's a very shiny, glitzy card that was very easy and quick to do, and I hope you give this technique a try. As always, I will leave you with this close-up and just a few pictures. For more information and the supply list, you can head to my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. The link is in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting!